All right, welcome everybody. This is the South Florida Tech Podcast, a bi-weekly show where we bring you the awesome, innovative people building our South Florida tech community. I am Nikki Cabus, the CEO of South Florida Tech Hub, and I am your host today. We have a wonderful guest with us this morning, and he has come from a new company that is actually working with another one of our members, Fuel Venture. They actually referred them. So our guest this morning is Salo Sterental, the co-founder of SoStereo. Sal is the co-founder of SoStereo, which is a music for advertising company that matches real artists making real music with brands that want to be remembered. Salo is a startup founder, musician, and creative partner who has worked in the music industry for more than 15 years. Salo has been partnering with Grammy-winning music engineers and production artists since he was 17. He has held roles such as a producer for Zumba Fitness, as an engineer for Flipstones, and in marketing for Sony Music Entertainment. He earned a bachelor's degree in music production and engineering from Berklee College of Music. So welcome, Salo, to our South Florida Tech Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Of course. So I was, of course, referred to you by another one of our members and partners. And overlooking the bio for you and what the company does, I have to say, I don't know of any other companies that do what you do. So I'm very interested to learn more about the company, figure out how you kind of started all this about. So if you want to start out just by telling us, who is Salo? Tell us a little bit about you, just in general, just so we can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm Salo. I was raised in Miami. I'm actually born in Peru. I came over here when I was like 8 or so. So I'm like a lot of Miamians, where we're not really from here, but we're from here. Right. So, it's nice to see all kind of everything that's happening in the ecosystem. I love it, as I'm a proud Miamian, and, I think Miamians have this kind of internal grit, this kind of like underdog mentality of like, we like to see our town win. Yeah. So, a little bit about me. I mean, yeah, I was passionate about music from a very young age. I knew that I wanted to do, have a life in music. Mm-hmm. Originally, that was more so on the creative side. So kind of, writing, songwriting, producing, engineering, creating music, right? My dream was to be kind of, a top 40, have songs in the radio, make music for the top artists in the world, right? And then eventually turn that into a business where I would have writers under me and have kind of, a roster of people that work, to make music, a production company essentially. So that was kind of where, life was leading me. I was lucky enough to get into Berklee College of Music, even though I'm not the most talented guitarist.
So guitar is your instrument of choice?
Guitar was my primary, but I wouldn't call myself a guitar player. Yeah, I think I got into Berklee because I showed enough of kind of well-roundedness, and, as part of getting into Berklee, obviously you have to do a rehearsal. So as part of my rehearsal, yeah, I showed some guitar chops, but I think if I just did that, it wouldn't have been enough. But I also sang, I showcased a song that I had written, and then I showcased some of the stuff that I had produced, in high school. Mm-hmm. I think that was enough to get me over the hump. I think kind of, I wanted to do production engineering. I didn't want to be a performer, and I showed my chops there, and I think they were impressed. So
I think that's important though. I mean, just the point of, just as you're talking, I'm thinking, because we do a lot at Tech Hub with tech talent and workforce development. And that's the first thing I thought of when you're talking, is that being well-rounded is so important, because it's not all the time just that one skill that you have, is that you were well-rounded and you've got other attributes that you can bring to the table. So I think that's kind of an important testament, and probably has a lot to do with where you are right now as well.
Yeah, I think for sure it has a lot to do with it. Yeah, I mean, I think knowing enough about different things, I also think, to the point, it's not just well-rounded for well-roundedness' sake. I think it's also a matter of, you can bring in something from, songwriting into production or into engineering. Mm-hmm. You can bring in something from business into production. Like, you can, if you are well-rounded enough and you know how to use that, you can bring in different aspects of life into, a different function. So, I won at my time in Berkeley, I'll go into all of that and how I met my founder and how we started SoStereo. But to this point, when I graduated, there's like senior awards and whatever, and I won the creativity award. And I think I won that award because I was just unafraid to try things differently, because I was keen to borrow from other places and insert them into, whatever I was doing. Right. So for example, if it was engineering, I would do something that was untraditional or never, people wouldn't think to do that, because that's not the right way to do it.
Really
But
cool.
hey, it worked over here. Why not borrow it and put it in here? And, and I think it got me the creativity award for thinking outside the box. And I think my professors recognized that. So
It sounds you had creativity and a lack of fear as well. I think a lot of people, the fear of failure makes them not even try at all, but it sounds like you didn't have much of that.
Yeah, I didn't care much for looking stupid or, what's the worst that can happen? Like, you have fun trying something new. If it doesn't work, I mean, look, there's also something to be said about you're in college, if you break a microphone, like it's not it's not yours. Like it doesn't really, but, if you fuck up a song, like you can always redo it. Right.
Yeah.
So
That's the time to do the trial and error and play with things and figure stuff out. And yeah, college is definitely the best time to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Until you have your own equipment, and then you don't want to try stuff out and break stuff so much.
You might be a little bit more hesitant for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to give you a quick rundown on SoStereo, the short story is it's, we put music in ads, right? So when McDonald's needs music for their commercial, they come to us, right? The long story is, we recognized that there was a need for a technology platform to open up access to artists' music for use in, in business use, right? In commercial use, right? Mm-hmm. So whether it's licensing for a commercial, whether it's licensing for a podcast, for stuff like that, there historically has never been open access to music. You can't go to Spotify and find your favorite artist and then click a button and then use them on your video, right? That doesn't exist. So the way that came about was, I met my business partner in college. We were, roommates all 4 years, freshman year. We met and we immediately kind of hit it off and talking about business, about music, about, we had similar passions in the sense of creativity, writing, production, etc. We both kind of had similar dreams. Mm-hmm. So we initially started working together, literally just making music. So we would make music for artists. We would try to pitch to bigger artists. And then eventually one of the big opportunities that came our way was working with Zumba Fitness, the fitness company. And we would literally just sell them music as a work for hire. And that was like our college drinking money.
Yeah.
And the opportunity came after a while of building enough trust with them. The opportunity came from them to say, hey, we are, spending a lot of money licensing music from major artists for these bigger campaigns. But it's very expensive, it's very time consuming, and the ROI is hard to tell because there's such big kind of expenditures. Mm-hmm. What do you recommend, right? So we came up with the idea of suggesting licensing music from indie artists, right? There's a little bit more of work in the sense of you have to find an artist that fits your brand, but once you do, it's much easier to execute and much more cost effective. So we did that. My business partner had some connections in Colombia. We found an artist, licensed some of her music, enabled that transaction. And soon enough, there was a groundswell from kind of Zumba goers that were Shazamming the song in class. We're going to the instructors and asking what the song was, where did they get it, whatever. So much so that it made it back to HQ and headquarters was like, all right, this is clearly working. Let's do something bigger with this artist. We did a custom video with that artist, and that netted about 10 million views in the first couple of months. It netted, mid to high 5 figures in sales within the first year, which again, for an indie artist out of Colombia was like unseen,
That's
unheard
huge.
of.
Yeah.
So that was our first kind of like aha moment where if you make it easy for a brand to work with an indie artist, there's something there where the brand can, create better ROI and create a, much more cost effective and simple execution of a campaign that could generate just as much, fanfare, while the, artists can generate revenue and help launch their careers in a sense, right?
I was just going to
Some of
say, I love that instead of finding people that people already know, that you guys are using those indie artists, and you literally just read my mind. You guys are literally helping launch their careers. I think that's really, really cool.
Right. There's something to be said about kind of the brand equity that builds, and the ability that, you love that artist, you put them on your Spotify playlist. Next time you're in your car, and you're with a friend, oh, this artist is dope. Yeah. I actually found this on a Zumba commercial or whatever. Right.
Really cool.
And Apple has been doing that for years to amazing success, and kind of they set a blueprint in that sense. And people always try to copy that, right? Because it's, we get briefs sometimes from other brands, like, we want the Apple treatment on this. We want to help people discover an indie artist. And it's like, I'm glad you're looking at that now, but you could have been doing this all along, right? So there's definitely, added value there. And, so that's kind of how we kind of got that first hint that there was something there. Fast forward years later, and, close with this. Fast forward years later, Beto was working at BMG Chrysalis in New York, this big publishing company. I was working with artists down here in Miami. Some were signed to majors, some were indie. And we both kind of separately realized the same thing, which was, these major artists, right, that are signed to these major companies that you think are, the creme de la creme, were coming to us saying, hey, I know what you did for Zumba. Can you help me license my music? Because, I'm not the priority of the month for the label, and therefore, my music isn't getting pitched for opportunities. And upon further kind of digging, we noticed that these major companies, have very rudimentary technology. It's like Web 1.0, not even Web 2.0. But they have millions of copyrights, and it's literally dependent on a team of 5, 10, 20 people to monetize these millions of songs for use in licensing, right? So not only do they, let's say if there's an offer for $1,000 for a social campaign for a small business, they don't even open that email, right?
Wow,
but let alone like, there's just so much, catalog that is just inaccessible, right? It doesn't exist. Zumba can't go on a platform and access, Sony's website and find a song that they like and license it directly from there. That doesn't exist, let alone a consumer or anybody else for that matter. So that's really kind of the second, wow, there's something here to implement technology to kind of, marry both sides, right? Bridge the gap. And that's, when we first got the idea to do SoStereo. And, in 2015, we started kind of like talking about our different work experiences and realizing this, and started kind of building it more with the idea to be a small business, a boutique. But quickly, when we had our first kind of product beta, let's call it, our first website iteration, and we started actually going to artists, going to record labels, and going to ad agencies and brands and TV networks, we started realizing, oh, wow, this could be a lot bigger, because, people were resonating with it so well. So that's when we really decided to kind of, put our foot to the gas and start really looking at this as a scalable startup business. And yeah, then that's the rest is history in a sense.
So, like I said, when I went to your website, I had never really heard of anything exactly like what you guys are doing. I think it's so different and so innovative. And, when you kind of were, I'm assuming you kind of told a few people close to you, like, hey, this is my idea, what I want to do. What was their reaction to that? Like,
so at first I wasn't really good at explaining it, because just the person that I am is more, I'm very detail oriented. And at first I was more, speaking about like what this could be and the potential, and to people outside of the music industry, right? Your family is kind of the first people you tell. They're like looking at me like I have 3 eyes, because they're like, what are you doing? So, but my family was super supportive, and the more kind of use cases we had where a brand came to us, or the more I could point to a TV commercial, while watching a basketball, oh, we did that commercial.
yeah,
They're like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's what you guys are doing. So yeah, it was a little bit, it took a minute for us to kind of really simplify what we're doing, to just say, the simple version is we put music, we put music in advertising, in commercials, right? There's a much, much, much bigger vision that we're executing on. We want to say that we want to unlock access to the world's music for brands and creators. There's a much, much bigger play and opportunity at hand. But right now, the core of what we do is really simply brands come to us to find music for their commercials, real music by real artists, not stock music that, is forgettable and, carte blanche.
Yeah. And I'm thinking as you're talking too, because I know we were saying earlier, the tag experience was the one that referred you. And and I knew I see them all the time, like everywhere, like, promoting different brands and companies, and they do a wonderful job. And I want to kind of slightly give them a plug here because I think they do a great job of what they do. I'm curious, when you went to them, were they familiar with kind of this industry, or was there a lot of educating back and forth? And,
So there was a little bit of familiarity because they also represent Soundtrack Your Brand. And
that's right. I forgot they
we
do.
do some, they are doing something similar to what we're doing, but for the physical space, or we're for the digital space, right? So we're doing video content, podcasts, radio, and they're doing retail spaces, right? So,
right.
But it's a very similar kind of music for brands and B2B solution, right?
Yeah.
In that sense. So there was a little bit of familiarity for sure.
I forgot about that. That's a good point. Yeah. So I'm going to switch to personal for a minute here. So, I did catch at the very beginning that you were saying you came here when you were 8 years old. I think you said Peru, right? Is where your family's from?
Perfect.
Yeah. So I caught a couple things. I love that just South Florida being the gateway to Latin America that it is. I mean, like you said, Miami. I mean, there's a ton of people that are Miamians, but not from here, My dad is actually Colombian from South America. And so I thought that was really cool too, that your big first, indie artist was from Colombia. And that's really interesting. I was actually just talking to somebody yesterday about the movie Encanto and how big that was. And I'm like, that's because it was Colombian. I've got great music.
Music is in the DNA of the country.
Yes.
My business partner is Colombian. All my friends in college were Colombian, and music is very much kind of ingrained in the DNA of the country and the culture there. And it's very special for sure.
Yes. Yeah. I know. I growing up with my dad, I mean, there was not a party that he wasn't up dancing. He actually used to collect, even past the record days, he collected like hundreds and hundreds of just records, all sorts of music. And that was like his thing. So it was really interesting for him, I mean, especially, similar to you and a lot of Latin Americans that come to the US. I mean, you kind of live both cultures. And so it was one of those things where he's like, I wanted to come here and be the best American that I could, but I also wanted to like not lose my culture, and you came here, fairly young.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask for you is like, what was that experience like when you came here? Did you speak English? Did your family already? Like, what was that experience like?
It was a little bit traumatic.
Oh, was it?
I mean, I wasn't an English speaker. You take classes, you start, you have an English teacher in school or whatever, but it's not, you're not fluent. Thank God we had some family here. But it was definitely a little bit of an adjustment,
Yeah.
I'm sure some kids, they move and they don't miss a beat. I was a little bit more sensitive, I'm a creative person, I guess. I mean, eventually, once you kind of get your groove in, it's you're fine. And I mean, I love Miami. I mean, I wouldn't go back to Peru. I would, Miami's home for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Peru, I was gonna say Peru's got good food too. That's my husband and I's one of our favorite places is going to Peruvian restaurants.
Colombia might have the music, but Peru has the food.
Yeah. I won't argue you on that. You've got that one.
Yeah.
So tell me, outside of work, what hobbies do you have? Are you, involved in any sports activities? I mean, what do you like to do when you're not working?
Honestly, I mean, I love sports. So, I'm not that big of a player of sports, although I'm starting to, I like, I used to a little bit, and I'm trying to get back into it just from an exercise perspective and just health. But, I love, the Heat. I love, all the sports, the Dolphins. I'm a big fan, even though I didn't go to my friends laugh at me because they all went to UF and I'm a big I'm all about the U, like, so I like
So
to,
you're the traitor in your friend circle.
I talk smack.
Yeah.
I'm the U representative. Yeah. So I follow them. I actually think, I could have a whole conversation about sports culture in Miami and how that's created a business culture here as well. From the 80s and 90s hurricanes to how that, I think when Pat Riley and the Heat came here, they kind of have a very similar DNA to the way that, the culture of the team. And now, nowadays there's the Heat culture, right? But I think that goes back to the early days of the Heat, and then even earlier to the early days of the University of Miami and Hurricanes football. And I think that, there's a whole element of culture there, and the grit, the hustle mentality, the work ethic that translates very well to, the Miami kind of work culture and work ethic here.
Yeah.
Different
Well, it's
cities.
funny you say that too about the U, because even my dad growing up, when he came from Columbia, he's always been in Palm Beach County, and he never went to the University of Miami, but he was obsessed also with the U. So that was one thing growing up. It was very similar, and there was a lot of sports talk and sports culture in our family as well.
Yeah, I mean the U swag, right? We always talk about that as fans, and it was like a mixture of confidence and work ethic, right? You can be confident, but if you don't have the work ethic to back that up, you're going to get smacked in the face and you're not going to be able to punch back, right? But if no one outworks you, and you have that confident, then that together creates this swagger. And I feel like that bled into the culture in Miami, and why people in Miami have this swagger, because, especially coming from Latin America, we know what poverty looks like. We know what, these other elements, where you can, you can't live the American dream or whatever, right? And I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but there's an element that sometimes Americans can be spoiled, because you're in a world where this doesn't exist, not here, right?
Right.
Well,
I will say, to this point is, and I'm gonna use my husband words so we can blame it on him, but my husband is from Central America. He's from Honduras. And one thing he always says is, when people talk about the poverty in the US, yes, we have poverty here. Yes, we have homelessness, but I remember one time we were out and we saw a t-shirt. It was supposed to be one of those like urban culture t-shirts, and it was talking about the ghettos, and it had a picture of like a ghetto here in South Florida. And he just was like, it's not the same. He goes, people that don't come from, Latin America, he goes, in Honduras, our ghettos are not like ghettos here. And he goes, but he owns his own business as well. And he was like, that's the kind of things that drive me. He goes, the Latin American culture, Latin American people just have that drive, because we know what real poverty looks like. And we come here so that
and
we
that's
can
not,
change that.
and I don't want to demean or degrade, like we do have, obviously, it might look different, but to those suffering it feels probably the same, right?
Right.
But the point that I was trying to make is more so about, you see it a lot more there, you see it everywhere.
More common.
You can't escape it. So especially in a city like Miami, where the majority is a minority, right? Right. I think we're the only city in the country where the majority of people are minorities. Mostly immigrants, mostly people that are not from here, that come from these places where you can't escape seeing poverty. Right. I mean, in Peru, I remember, every day on my way to school, right, there's kids in the street begging for money, like babies, kids, and that stays with you. And in a city where most people have seen that, I think it creates a certain amount of drive and a certain amount of work ethic. And speaking about sports culture and that side of things, I think that, seeing that in a positive light of what work ethic can turn you into a champion, in a city like Miami that in the 80s and 90s had championships in football, in the early 2000s in basketball. I just think the two kind of married very well, and it led to a culture in Miami, like a work culture in Miami that I love.
Yeah. And I personally love seeing what's going on right now with, because I mean, the whole state of Florida has always been such a transient state, people coming in and out. And, we've always been known for tourism. And and people probably heard me say this before on different talks and things, but I think as terrible as the pandemic was for so many people, that for South Florida as a whole, as we finally got the ability, because the cruise ships stopped. I mean, hotels were not taking people. There were, I mean, vacations stopped, right? And so we got the chance to finally showcase what we have here, that grit
Yeah.
and that culture and the business mentality and things that I think were often very overlooked and people didn't even know that we really had here, that we've had for decades. It's kind of been hidden because there's
Yeah.
so much
People never took
tourism
us
and
seriously.
hospitality.
Yeah. People never took us seriously. And I think, to the point again on sports bleeding into Miami culture is, in the early days of the U, it was the convicts versus the Catholics against Notre Dame, right? Where,
Yeah.
because we were this, underdog team, people saw us as the convicts, right? Like people never took Miami seriously.
Right.
In the early 2000s, Pat Riley came here to retire, right? People, they used to say, people go to Miami only to vacation. No one wants to live there, right? So I think from that perspective, whether it is in sports, work culture, et cetera, people never took Miami seriously. And that created that kind of underdog mentality, that grit. We're going to work behind the scenes while nobody's watching, and we're going to be champions. We're going to, create billion-dollar businesses. We're going to change the world. And finally, yeah, I mean, people started moving here because of the pandemic, et cetera. And, people actually like opened their eyes to, oh, wow, like, there is a work culture here. People do live here. And, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I've had multiple conversations with out-of-towners where they're like, Miami is for partying, Fort Lauderdale is spring break, and Palm Beach is to retire. And I'm like, nope, there's so much more to South Florida than all of that. But that's the kind of
Yeah.
those stereotypes that we've kind of been labeled with in South
Right.
Florida.
Right. And I think, part of the reason I'm excited is that people are starting to finally open their eyes to like what is here now and what the potential is with
Yeah,
that realization, right? Because
where we
we
could
are
go.
kind of the capital of Latin America. We do have a great foundational work ethic, work culture. We are a very healthy city. People work out. People are, um, you know, in the sunshine, the beach, et cetera. I mean, there is an element of mental health there, um, and that opens up, we have, because we are, central to Latin America, we have a big entertainment focus as well, where a lot of the entertainment, companies have their Latin headquarters here or whatnot. Sports, like I like to think of Miami as, we can be LA, we can be New York, we can be San Francisco, in the sense of we can be major metropolitan, economic centers for the country, and internationally, really, because we have the right mixture of things here, and people are finally starting to see it.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, you just made me think of something too. So when you came here from Peru, did you ever leave for a long period of time and decide to come back to Miami, or you've kind of always been here, or
Well, I mean, I went to college
right?
in Boston for 4 years.
But did you come back directly after that, or it took you some
Yeah,
time to decide to
no,
come
I
back
came back
to?
directly after that. My
Okay.
my idea was to come back for a couple months, take a break from, after graduating, and then go to LA and start my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually started working with some people down here in kind of the artist community, some with the majors, et cetera, and making music, where I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just make my career here. Or, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay here forever, but it was kind of enough to keep me here for a little bit longer,
Yeah.
and a little bit longer, a little bit longer, a little bit longer. Then we started SoStereo, and then it's just like, now I'm here.
So what is for somebody that's not in the music industry, um explain to me, like, what is that culture? Because you were talking about potentially moving to, I think you said Los Angeles, right?
Yep.
So what is the culture here, the music industry, look like versus like a Los Angeles? Like, what are some of the pros and cons, and where would you want to see that industry go?
I mean, there's nothing like LA in the sense of in the entertainment industry. I mean,
Right.
just let's be real. LA is the capital of entertainment for a reason. It's, where Hollywood is. All the majors are there, from a music perspective. And because of all the majors being there, then all the indies are there. And then, all the
Right.
freelancers are there. There's just, there's so much industry built there, where, yeah, in Miami, we have a couple, we have the major record labels, right? We have a couple of, film and TV studios that have offices here, but there isn't that kind of vertical and horizontal integration that you have in LA here, right? You might have an office here, you might have, a recording studio here. For TV, you might have an office for TV, but there isn't, you might have a couple of TV studios, but there isn't that kind of wide ranging, it's not as vast as it is in LA. So we do have some of the pieces, but it's by no means, I think, in a place to compete realistically with LA. But that's not to say that we can't form a really, I don't think New York is LA either, right? I don't think New York stacks up against LA, especially during, the recessions of 2008, and a bunch of recording studios closed, a bunch of TV studios closed, and now in the past couple of years, right, kind of, entertainment, music, etc. It can be a fickle business where a recession can wipe out people, and in places that don't have that vast network and that vast infrastructure, let's call it, it's a lot harder to maintain through these kind of ups and downs. But I think I would compare Miami to New York in that sense, where you do have enough infrastructure to sustain it, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's competitive to the level of LA.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you have to do a lot of traveling back and forth? Or are you able to work primarily virtually?
We work primarily virtually. We used to do a lot of travel back and forth to LA. The decision makers are going to be in LA for most of the things that we want to do. Now the business that we're in, we don't need the majors to run a successful business, right? In the music industry, I think over 50% of the music industry is independent in terms of revenues. So we don't need the majors, but obviously we want to, we know we can scale a lot quicker and faster with the majors in tow. So, whenever we do that, and we've done some stuff with them in the past, yes, it's out to LA to meet with them and to get them on board on certain things for sure. Yeah, we rely, on people here to kind of do some tests, kind of get in the door, etc. But the bigger deals will probably happen with people out west, or with people here helping us connect with people out west and do it virtually.
Right. Well, that's the way the world is going now, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I got a few more questions here for you. One of them that I did want to ask is, so what is something, I guess, an advice that you would give to somebody that is in either the music industry and wants to do something with technology, or another startup founder, or somebody that has an idea and they're just not sure, do I try this? Do I not? Where do I go? Like, what is a piece of advice that you would give to another startup founder?
To a startup founder, I would say to read The Lean Startup.
The book.
I didn't know anything about startups when we first started SoStereo, because again, we started with the idea of being more of a boutique company. And then once it started becoming that was the first thing I read, because there is so many learnings about how to, ultimately you want to scale something as quickly as possible, as big as possible, without resources, right? Because you don't have resources at the beginning, unless, either you're super rich or you have, like, I don't know. So you need to figure out a way to test your ideas. And I think really what it boils down to, that book, is how to create the processes or the infrastructure to test an idea without resources. And I think that's,
I've heard from multiple people, that's a wonderful book.
Yeah, it is. And there's, subsequent reading as well. I think when we were first building YC, they put kind of the YC startup school on YouTube. I don't know if it's still there or not, but that was also very key for us. And, I think for startup founders, it's to test your idea, to find creative ways to test your idea without having anything. So that's number one. For someone in the music industry, my advice would be slightly different. My advice is you can't let anybody outwork you. Like there's so many people that want to be in entertainment. The talent is just simply not enough. You could be the most talented person, but if you're not willing to put in the hours, um, you know, it's just not going to happen
Yeah.
most likely. So I think work ethic is something that the music industry teaches you.
Yeah. Well, and that's always something I know for me, as a hiring manager, that's one of the top things I always look for is good work ethic, because you can be the smartest person in the world, but if I can't get you to work or be there on time or whatever, a lot of those soft skills are just as important as the physical hard skill itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, to borrow from sports, the Dolphins in the past, I don't know, a couple of years had a mantra that was, it takes no talent. And then they had a bunch of things that are things that don't take talent. It doesn't take talent to be on time. It doesn't take talent to be respectful. It doesn't take talent to
Yeah.
work. It doesn't take talent, it's just, things that you just need to do.
Yeah.
Says someone who's not usually on time.
That's
The
okay.
proper
That's
Latin.
the Latin in you. We'll forgive a few minutes here and there.
Yeah.
So you brought up resources. The stage that the company's at right now, if you could give a plug for yourself, what are you looking for? Like, do you need talent? What resources are you looking for? I mean, where could the local South Florida tech community help you?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're actually thinking about doing a fundraise at this point, because we, thank God, have had a very successful couple of years, where COVID actually accelerated a lot of the things from a thesis standpoint that we've been working on and thinking about. And our numbers right now bear out that, just to kind of give you a little bit of context, our numbers, unit economic standpoint, bear out that we could be growing significantly faster than we are. Our LTV to CAC ratio is like something like 19x in Q1, which is like stupid high. But we can't grow fast enough because given the cash on hand that we have, given the ramp up rate for a salesperson to come in and actually, get their clients on board and get brands, et cetera. And then kind of the payout period just from a cash flow perspective. So, number one is, we could be growing faster. So we're actually thinking about, is it time to do a fundraise? Is it time to borrow? Is it time to, with like interest rates going up, we're kind of looking at that, right?
Yeah.
Because we could be growing faster. And then also from a technology standpoint, I think we're at a really interesting point where there's so much opportunity in our space. I think another key kind of insight was TikTok and how that blew up right over COVID. I dare to say that if TikTok didn't have music as a core functionality and allow users to just put music up to their video, which is what we do, it wouldn't have been able to compete with Instagram. And yet they do that. And then now all of a sudden, it feels like almost overnight, even though I know they were Music Ally first, feels like now they're, in a matter of a couple of years, they grew to this enormous company to compete with the likes of Instagram. And it's really because of music, right?
Right.
And
I was
still,
thinking that early on when you were talking too, because I feel like so many, artists now that you find that have, these singles or whatever that are out there from TikTok, they get found there.
it's a huge proof case for us, right? And that's great in the social sphere, right? When it's consumers, but a brand can't go in there and put music on their TikTok
Right.
video, right? It's a different license. They don't have the rights to do that, right? You can't, a brand, or an influencer can't take their video from TikTok and put on YouTube because there's copyright infringement. You can't
Right.
put that on a television show or a TV commercial because there's no infrastructure there, right? So from a technology point, again, there's a lot of key insights and key kind of proofs in the past couple of years that we're, everything to your point on resources and what I was talking about earlier with the lean startup, our thesis from even, 2017, when we decided to make this a formal startup, everything we've been proven right. Our gut has been right. And even our solutions, for the most part, our product has been right. Yeah, we've made some product, blunders here and there where we've made the wrong product for whatever the solution is, but that's part of learning. And, especially with the lean methodology, you don't spend a year doing a product, right? You spend a month, maybe. So I think from a technology perspective, what we need again is kind of, to expand the tech team into, and that's also part of the should we raise, should we borrow, should we, expand, should we just invest our current cash flow? So that's all kind of what we're going through right now internally about, looking at resources to expand essentially.
Right. It sounds like the two very typical money and manpower are the main issues, right?
Yeah, bandwidth is the biggest thing for sure right now.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the time. So we're right about at the end of our conversation. I do have a really quick, fun kind of Q&A for you just to kind of close us out. So I wanted to ask you, we have about 3 or 4 questions here. So the first one, are you a morning person or night person?
I'm a night person, 1,000%.
Yay, got another one. Me too. I always envy the morning persons. I've tried it over and over and over, and I just can't do it.
I want to be so badly a morning person, but I'm just
Me
not.
too. Ditto. I've tried, but nope. I'm the one that's up till 2 a.m. I can't wake up at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I agree.
Another one. So are you reading any books right now?
A couple that I read on and off. I'm not the biggest reader of books. I'm more of an articles person, but what's on my night side, 2 that are on my night side that I'm trying to get through, whenever I feel like picking up a book is, so there's a Harvard Business Review book. They do books where they compile a lot of their articles into books. And there's one on managing people. And there's a lot of like research about, how to be a good boss, essentially. That's very good. I very recommended. When I first picked it up, I read a chapter and I'm like, shit, I just went through that with an employee and we had to fire that employee. And, it's funny that if I would have read that a year before I had to deal with this employee, maybe I would have done some things differently. And I think they say that, you don't quit jobs, you quit bosses. And thankfully, I don't think I've had anybody quit. So we're doing something right from that perspective.
I love though that you were introspective with that and are at least able to take it and say, okay, turn it on itself and say, okay, am I doing this the right way, and learning from that. I think that's good, because not every leader does that. Yeah,
I mean, there's 2 things from a culture standpoint in SoStereo. We take culture very seriously. And me and my co-founder believe that, we're very, we try to lead without ego in the sense, right? It's not about me, it's about the company. And we try to instill that not only in ourselves and hold each other accountable as co-founders, but also in our employees, right? And 2, there's a certain level of servant leadership where nowadays you have to be at least a little bit of a servant leader, if not a lot of a servant leader. Our philosophy is hire great people and kind of and support them and get out of the way, like give them what they need. So there's both of those things there. And then there's another book called Make It Stick, which is just a constant, I think it's a great book on just general branding and sticky. It's just about ideas and how to create sticky ideas and the psychology behind how our mind works when it comes to proposing ideas and concepts in a way that, everything from politics and government to branding and marketing, how to make ideas stick to someone's mind and the psychology behind that.
I love that. I'm going to look that one up. I love that one. Now I've got 3 books to look up from this conversation.
Yeah.
So my last question here is going to be, do you have any quotes, Bible verses, mantras, anything that you kind of live by? Like, is that just like kind of your life statement?
There's a few. There's one in Spanish, El que no llora no mama. I don't know if you know what that means. It's basically, it's in the context of the baby that doesn't cry doesn't eat. Like, how do you know if a baby's hungry? It cries, right? So the bigger concept there is if you don't ask, you're not going to get anything.
Right.
So, especially as a startup founder, you have to ask, like, you have to kind of put your foot in the door and like, what's the worst that can happen? They can say no. Right. There's that one is like a big one. There's the Michael Jordan, I forgot how it goes, but something about loosely, you're never gonna, something about a shot.
Oh, is
I
he
don't know.
the one
I'm
that
gonna butcher it.
said, you'll never make the shots that you don't take?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That one. And then there's another one by Thomas Edison. I didn't fail. I just figured out 99 ways that don't work or something
Yes.
like that.
Right.
So all of those, I think, speak about, again, taking chances. You know, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Be fearless, and if you fail, okay, you fail, but it's not failure. It's just you found something that doesn't work and now you can try something else,
Right.
Yeah. So
You start
all of
you
those
start
things.
the next time that much more educated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are all kind of, um, yeah, some that just like day to day, I think are super important.
I love that. I love that. And I love that that was your answer to the final question, because that's how we started out the conversation, was talking
Yeah.
about your fearlessness and trying things out. So that was a perfect circle right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, I am so glad that I had the pleasure to meet you and talk to you. And again, just looking at when I was referred to you and your bio and what you guys are doing with the company, it sounded really interesting. So I'm just happy now that we're able to share this with our South Florida tech community, and hopefully you'll have some people reach out to you after this about some of those resources too. So
Yeah. I appreciate it. It's been fun for
of
sure.
course, of course. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you
All right, keep in touch.
for
Thanks,
sure.
Salo.
Thank you.
Bye.